Well, good morning, Journey. How we doing? It is good to see you. Good to have you here. If this is your first time with us, just so grateful you're here. We're honored. If this is your first time back in a long time, we're grateful. If this is your first time back in 7 days, we're excited about that too. So, want to welcome everybody joining us online as well as our Lake County campus. Just so still in awe of what we saw God do last week. I mean, as we celebrated with millions around the world, what an incredible day Easter Sunday was. And before we move into the service, I just want to give God all the glory and the honor. And we're just so grateful to see how many lives were changed. Just last week between two campuses, we saw over 3,500 people attend in person, hundreds and hundreds of more people all online. And just really, really, really cool. But the cool part was how many people said yes to Jesus. We saw 115 people say yes to Jesus and get baptized. Come on. Man, absolutely bananas what we saw God do last week. Pastor John preached such a great message. I heard it, I think 5 times because I heard it before the 4 services, and I was still leaning in, even on the 5th one, just powerful, powerful. And sometimes we can get lost in numbers, but what I want us to understand is behind every number is a name, and behind every name is a story. And every number represents somebody that Jesus sent, or God sent his son Jesus to die for. And just we go on for a long time with stories. We've got a couple of stories. The 8 o'clock service here at Apopka, we had Pastor Jeremy, our worship pastor. He has been praying, him and Crystal have been praying for their neighbors for a long time, several years now. We've prayed together with them. 8 o'clock service, the whole family comes, and not only does the whole family come, the whole family decides to say yes to Jesus and get baptized. And super, super awesome. So incredibly encouraging. And so I go over there, Pastor Randy's doing the baptism. He motions for me, and he said, hey, these are Pastor Jeremy's neighbors. And I was like, I know. And he's like, well, go get them. And so I'm over there, and I look over, and Jeremy's like leading worship. I said, well, he's leading worship. And Randy looked at me like I was, so what? Like, go get him. Yes, sir. And I didn't have to go get Jeremy. I just let him know, hey, man, your neighbors are getting baptized. And him and Crystal went and helped with the baptismal. One of the cool things is Jeremy just walked over and climbed over the baptismal in his clothes. This is the 8 o'clock service. So that means he led worship for the rest of the day in wet clothes. And I don't know about you, but that's the kind of worship pastor I want leading me in worship. Isn't that cool? So neat. And then we had, at another service, I think it was the 9:30 service, we had a family of 3 watching online and just impacted, but they're online, they were processing, okay, what do we do? How do we respond to this? So they just got in their car and they drove over here, and husband, wife, and child, all 3 got baptized from online to in-person baptism. Isn't that cool? Online community, absolutely love it. Absolutely, absolutely love it. So I want to say thank you. Pastor Don and I talked so much about how y'all leaned into Easter. You prayed, you stepped up and served. Many of you gave. Some of you gave of your seat and attended a different service you normally don't sit in. Some of you invited friends, and I just want to thank you for being a church that leans in, and I think we just saw God honor that. And so really excited about that. But let's go on to this series. We are starting a brand new series called How to Have a Perfect, healthy family. And the whole idea with this series is sometimes, especially in the social media world, we can think that the goal is to have a perfect family, but that's never in the Bible. It's not biblical to have a perfect anything. Only Jesus was perfect. We are called to be healthy, not perfect. And progress is the goal, not perfection. And so what does it look like to have a healthy family? What are some tools that we could add to the tool belt? And so what we're gonna do is walk in a 3-week series that we're gonna talk about starting today. And each week what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at a myth that the world might believe versus a truth that we see in Scripture. So today, the myth, week 1, perfect families don't fight. Some of y'all are like, I don't know anything about that. Truth, healthy families fight fair. Next week, myth number 2, perfect families don't mess up. The truth is, healthy families walk in grace. Myth number 3, perfect families do it all. The truth is, healthy families have boundaries. So today we're gonna talk about this idea of how to fight fair. And because as one of your pastors, I just want you to know I take my job serious. I didn't wanna just come in and wonder if what I'm gonna teach you is relevant. So I picked a fight with every person in my family over the past month, just to test out the material. And what's funny is my kids didn't even notice. They just thought it was a normal month. And so that's another problem, you know? They're like, Dad, we didn't know. We just thought you were being you. So my wife's name is TJ, and TJ and I's relationship was founded on fighting. And before we get into that, I just want you to know I love my wife. And I am incredibly, incredibly grateful for how patient and kind she has been. Yes, you can clap. You can do whatever you want. Just make sure you're on my side. Okay. Seriously, I wish I could tell you some of this stuff on fighting fair came from a book, but the truth is it came from hard knocks, from me doing it wrong and being a knucklehead many times. And so just grateful for my wife's kindness. So our relationship started on the foundation of fighting. Early on, we got into a really big, loud, messy, just messy, loud, horrible food fight. And it was just unbelievable. I don't know how it started. I can't remember that long ago. I would imagine she started it and probably said, I'm just being real, probably said something bad about the Orlando Magic and I had to stick up for them. And so I don't remember. All I remember is in came food flying at my face, and then there was chocolate syrup, then there was peanut butter, then there was whipped cream, there was fruit, anything in the kitchen. We just had this massive food fight. And what I need you're the jury, I need you to help me decide who won, okay? So here's the photo of the aftermath, okay? What I need you to focus on, guys, I need y'all to focus. Don't focus on this, okay? Don't focus on this. I know you got a lot of questions, okay? What I need you to focus on is the evidence, okay? Right here, that's evidence, okay? Right here, chocolate syrup, so whipped cream, chocolate syrup, maybe some more chocolate. Look at that death stare. Yes, I'm still not used to that, okay? Nothing really on me. This is just a little nothing. So how many of y'all think my wife won? How many think I won? Yeah. Let the record, everybody online in Lake County, overwhelming response that I won. Overwhelming response. Listen, my wife wins at everything. So that's the message right there. And so this was early on, as you could tell, and I was going through some identity issues apparently. And so we learned to fight. We learned to fight early in our marriage. Some would say that it was love at first fight. And so I've been lovingly fighting with her ever since. And that was during our dating stage. And then when we got married, the fighting changed. It changed from silly food fights to serious brawls. And as we talk about this, I want to make sure I'm sensitive. Anything today, I'm not talking about anything that has to do with abuse. So none of that, because I know there are some very serious, so when I use the word fighting fair, I'm talking about conflict, arguments, any of that. So when we get into our marriage, there are more serious arguments and fights, not just throwing food at each other and being silly. And I remember we bought our first house, so excited to get into it. And then my wife came up with the idea of painting the living room a certain color. Well, I didn't like that color. And so I made sure, in case she couldn't understand the nonverbal cues, that she clearly understood I didn't like that color. So I explained it to her. That's a horrible color. Pick another one. I know you're gonna think this is crazy. She didn't take kind to that, So we literally, as dumb as this sounds, got into a big argument over the color of our walls. That's how dumb and petty I am. Now, how many of y'all think that I painted the walls the color of her choice? Every hand should be raised. Every hand. Of course I painted it the color of her choice. And some of y'all are like, oh, that's so sweet. What a godly husband to serve his wife. I didn't say anything about serving her. I just lost. I lost. I argued every step of the way. I made it miserable. I can imagine painting like this saying, I don't want to do this. I cannot believe I'm doing this. Every person that probably ever came into our living room, I probably pointed out how horrible the color was. See, there was nothing in me that was serving. There was nothing in me that was kind. There was nothing in me that was godly, even though I did it while putting up a fight. And that cost us some chips. That cost us in relational equity. And so one of the things we want to talk about is how do we fight fair? And so I learned along the way, how do we actually fight fair? And this isn't about couples because as I've studied families, siblings fight. Can I get an amen? Parents fight with their kids. Kids fight with their parents, aunts, uncles, cousins. So when I'm talking about fighting, it's anything in the family unit. Dr. John Gottman, he studied marriages for over 40 years, and he said he can go into a restaurant and he can observe another family handling conflict, and he could watch them for 15 minutes from a distance. And he can determine whether that family is going to get divorced or not later on down the road to 83% accuracy. 83% accuracy. Because this is what he said, it's not if we fight, it's how we fight. And he was observing how they fought. He went on to say this, many couples claim we never fight is a sign of marital health. He says, but I believe we grow in relationships by reconciling our differences. That's how we become more loving people and truly experience the fruits of marriage. I want to illustrate it with, hold the phone, hang on. Here we go. Whoa, easy there. There's an animal under here, hang tight. There's no animal. There we go. This is a piggy bank. This is my piggy bank. Every relationship that you have, every single one, in your family and outside of your family, with your boss, coworker, anybody, your neighbor, every relationship you have a bank account with. Every single one. And the way that a bank account works, a piggy bank or a checking or savings account, the way it works is if you put money in, you get to take money out. So if I put $100 in, I get to go to Sizzler with my wife. I get to take her out on a nice date. So if I put money in, I get to go to 7-Eleven, get gas, whatever it is. If I try to take money out without putting it in, if I take more withdrawals than deposits, then I'll go bankrupt. I'll bankrupt my relationships. Every relationship that you have is a bank account, every single one. You are either putting in deposits or you are taking withdrawals or a combination of both. Here's how you have healthy relationships. You're putting in more deposits than you are withdrawals. Listen, every day you wake up, you don't have to think about making a withdrawal. You will automatically make withdrawals in every relationship you have. Automatically, because you and I are human. We will automatically disappoint people. We will automatically, without knowing it, hurt somebody. We will automatically be late or say something unkind, and what that is a withdrawal. So before we get into kind of the rules of engagement on how to fight fair, I just want to talk to you about how do you build up a relationship that can withstand some conflict. And the way that you do that is by depositing as much as you can before you even get to a conflict. You make deposits not based on what you want, but based on what their needs are. Dr. Gary Chapman, he wrote a book and came up with this incredible idea called the 5 love languages. Some of you may have been familiar with it. If you're not, I'm gonna walk us through the 5 love languages. We can spend a whole series on this. I'm gonna go really, really quick on what they are. He basically says we all like to be loved in one of these 5 areas. What that means is if I try to love one of my kids the way I like the expression of love, it may be kind, but I think I'm giving a $1 deposit, but to them it's only a 10-cent deposit. Unless I understand what their ROI, the return on investment, what I understand their love language is, it's not gonna equate. So it's not my job to give them what I feel, but what is best for them? What do they desire? What do they like? So here are the 5. The first one is this, acts of service. This is all about actions speaking louder than words, serving them. Maybe it's through chores or just being kind and picking up around the house or doing some, whatever it is, acts of service. Next one. Receiving gifts, receiving a heartfelt gift is what makes them feel most loved. Third one, quality time. This is all about giving the other person your undivided attention. Fourth one is words of affirmation. This is about using your words to affirm the people you love. Then the fifth one is physical touch. To this person, nothing speaks more deeply than appropriate physical touch. So what I want to encourage you, here's some homework. Figure out with your family, what are your love languages? Talk about it over lunch or over dinner. We in our family, we've talked about it multiple times, and we're aware of what they are so that we can best serve one another when it comes to depositing into our relationships, knowing that no matter what, sooner or later, we're gonna make some withdrawals. I love what Galatians 6:7 says. It echoes this. It says, don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always reap what you sow. Healthy families take intentionality. They do not happen on accident. So with that said, we're gonna talk about 3 rules to fighting fair. Are y'all with me? Y'all in? Yes. All right, now some of this won't land on you because I know some of y'all don't fight in your family, but some others, some of us, we do. So 3 rules to fighting fair. Rule number 1, listen to understand, not to reload. Y'all know what I'm talking about? We got some reloaders in the house, don't we? You don't even know what I'm saying. You're just already loading. A reloader is someone that during a conflict, during an argument, they're not listening to you. They're looking at you. They're nodding their head. This is a gift that God has given men to appear like we're listening, but we don't, okay? And sometimes what a reloader does is they look like they're listening, but really they're processing all the arguments that are about to just throw on you. The minute that you take a millisecond to breathe, right? It's a comma, it's not even a period, just a millisecond. They just unload everything, every reason why you're wrong, every reason why they're right, and they are just, they're not listening to learn, they're listening to reload. They actually need a minute to process how they're gonna argue with you next. That's the only reason they're not talking, okay? So rule number 1, listen to understand, not to reload. Proverbs 18:2 says this, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. Pretty accurate. James 1:19 says, everyone should be quick to listen. Here's a little listening exercise. To literally repeat back to the person you're in conflict with what you think the conflict is about. So I'll give you an example. So let's just say I'm in a conflict with my wife, and I say, I'm trying this out, and I say, it seems like you're frustrated because I'm so attractive that you're not able to focus on your chores around the house. Is that accurate? That's what it seems like. It seems like that. Is that what you're saying, honey? And she'll say, no, not at all. That's not even close. What I'm saying is it doesn't seem like you really listen to me. And then I say, what I hear you saying is it doesn't seem like you think I listen to you well. Is that accurate? Yes, that is accurate. That's a great exercise. If you start practicing that, it's gonna feel very foreign, but I promise you it will help you. If you could just practice repeating, I hear you saying this, is that accurate? That helps kind of settle things down and gets everybody on the same page. Rule number 2, talk to help, not to hurt. Talk to help, not to hurt. Ephesians 4:29. I added this part when arguing because this verse is real, but it's real all the time, not just sometimes. So I want you to picture this when arguing. When arguing, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Imagine that. When you're arguing, imagine living this verse out. Not letting any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. You see, every conflict, every argument, you have the choice to pick up 1 or 2 buckets, okay? The very first bucket that you can pick up is right here. Fire. You can pick up a can of gasoline. Every time there's conflict, you can pick one of these up. Some of you are like, listen, I got one of those in my back pocket. Every time that there's a conflict, I'll give you an example of what bringing a can of gas into an argument is. 1, gas makes fires bigger. gas makes fires out of control. Gas makes everything about it bigger. Here's some examples about in an argument or conflict, how you can make a fire bigger. If you say something like, you are a deadbeat husband, that makes the fire bigger. Has nothing to do with the actual conflict. The conflict may have been he was running late. So now we're not even talking about that. Now you're a deadbeat husband. Or you never do anything right. So now we're talking about absolutes. Is that true that this person never did anything right? No. And if it was me, if I was a smart aleck and somebody said that, I would say, well, what do you mean I never did anything right? Are you saying that me marrying you? I mean, what do I do with that? Don't put that in your back pocket. Don't quote me. That would be another example of gas. You're the worst mother ever. The people that love us most, listen, the people that love us most know us best, so they can hurt us the most. And when we are in conflict, what we choose to wound cuts so deep because we could say things like that, right? We know how to hurt them so much. And so what we can do is we can just add the gas on conflict. The other thing that we can do, you have a choice. You could either grab a can of gas or a bucket of water. You see, what a bucket of water does to a fire is it puts it out. It controls it. And so what we do is you and I, we have options every time there's conflict. Are we gonna pour water on it or are we gonna pour gasoline on the conflict? And you and I, especially if we're mature in the faith, should always lean towards here. That's what we're called to do, is bring peace to conflict, to try to resolve conflict, not spread it. Here are some examples of what it looks like to bring a bucket of water to an argument. Someone might say, you forgot to take the trash out last week. Can you please try to remember to do that for me? Okay, so one of the things they did is they talked about a specific event, not your always, it's one specific event. They are asking, so it's a sign of humility, will you please take it out next week? That's putting water on a situation. It's controlling it. Another example is this. I know you've had a stressful week, but you really hurt me when you spoke so rudely to me at dinner. So one, it's acknowledging that they've had a stressful week. Two, it's talking about their pain, and nobody can argue about your pain or what you're feeling. And so it's saying, I feel this way. Can you please not do that? Those are examples on how to bring water. So in this idea of bringing water or gas, I want to encourage you to what I would call to and refer to as the never evers. Here's a list of never evers. Don't ever do these things. Never ever name call. Never ever name call. Don't name call. It's not helpful. And if I could just be very honest with you, it's very immature. It comes across like you're a middle school child when you name call. Either you name call them a type of name, or sometimes if we really want to hurt them, we'll call them somebody that we mutually don't like and we think it's like wild or crazy. Whether it's an in-law or a crazy neighbor or something, we'll call them that. And what are we doing? It doesn't help. Never, ever raise your voice. Every time you raise your voice, what you're doing is you're taking this and you're just pouring it. That's all you're doing. Because when you raise your voice and this person wants to be heard, what do they have to do? They have to raise your voice louder, their voice louder. And then when this person wants to talk, what do they? And so you just get louder and louder and louder. Don't raise your voice. Listen, your conflict in your home shouldn't impact the entire family. Two siblings having conflict, that's not bad. Conflict's a part of life. But for your conflict to disrupt the entire home because you are dysfunctional in handling it, that's not appropriate. A husband and wife are gonna have conflict, that's normal. But the kids should not be so bent out of shape because you don't know how to handle it properly. Never ever say never or always. You never do that. You always do so-and-so. You always forget. When you bring absolutes to the table, most of the time, if not all the time, it's exaggerated and not true. And it's not helpful. We're trying to resolve conflict. It's not helpful. Next, never ever threaten divorce. Never ever threaten divorce. You just use it as a weapon to weaponize an argument, and there's nothing helpful. It can only do this. I know when we were getting married, my wife and I, the guy that married us, we were going to premarital counseling, and he gave us a dictionary, and he turned to divorce, and he literally ripped it out of the dictionary and handed it to us. And he said, divorce is not even in your vocabulary. Isn't that good? So we don't even say the D word in our house. It's not an option. It's kind of like an athlete. If you're running and training, if you just stop, if you just have the thought that I'm gonna stop, then you're already done. You can't even entertain that thought. And if you are in a marriage and you entertain the thought that you're done, then you're already halfway done. You can't even entertain that. Don't entertain, don't threaten the word divorce. Here's 2 questions you could ask during conflict. 1 is, should it be said? And 2 is, should it be said now? Should it be said? There are some things that should never be said, but there are some things that should be said, but just is now the right time. Should it be said, and should it be said now? James 1:19 says this, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. All right, rule number 3, resolve your conflict today or suffer more tomorrow. Ephesians 4:26 says this, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Can I just tell you one of the greatest things and intimacies of marriage is knowing that my wife and I are committed tomorrow to be together. It's one of the greatest things, because if I'm gonna be committed to her tomorrow, well, I may as well figure it out today. Like if we're gonna wake up tomorrow, which we've already committed to, then let's just figure this out today. I don't wanna ruin tomorrow too. There's a couple that they were getting into an argument, so they gave each other the silent treatment. I don't know if y'all do the silent treatment or not. They gave each other the silent treatment. And this went on for several days. They just kind of avoided each other, kept giving each other the silent treatment. And then a couple more days went on, still silent treatment. Neither one of them wanted to break it. Just stubborn couple. And then finally, there's one day that comes up, and the husband has to get up at 4:45 in the morning. He has a business trip, and he has to get to the airport. Normally, the wife wakes him up because the alarm is on her side of the bed, but he doesn't want to ask her to set it because he doesn't want to break it. So he writes on a note, I need to get up at 4:45 tomorrow. Will you please wake me up? Puts it on her nightstand. Next day comes around. He wakes up at 9 a.m. He is irate. Missed his flight. He's angry. He gets out of bed, takes the covers off, gets out of bed, getting ready to yell at her. As he does, right there on the nightstand, there's a sticky note. It says, it's 4:45 a.m., time to get up. That's funny. Listen, the silent treatment never works. It never works. The silent treatment never works. And here's what I would say. If you never go to bed angry, then you always wake up with a smile. If you don't go to bed angry, you wake up happily married. And that's the goal. Here's a little cheat sheet on how do you love somebody when you have conflict is pray for them. Like that's not some super spiritual pastor language. Like pray for them, because here's the deal. You can't pray for God to bless somebody and harbor illness towards them at the same time. It's not possible. Try it. You can't pray for a kid that you're frustrated with and not have a softer heart towards them. You can't pray for a spouse or a parent that you're frustrated with and at the same time harbor bitterness. You just can't do it. And a lot of times what happens is when you pray for them, that God would bless them, guess what he ends up doing? Calling you to be the one to bless them. He has a way of softening your heart when you pray for them. I want to encourage you to fight fair. I'll give you a real life example, okay? Take it or leave it. This is just a practice that we do. This helps me and my wife a lot. If you have your own, great. If not, you could adopt this. So let's just say that, in our house, I do the dishes. And let's just say 3 or 4 days went by and I didn't do the dishes and my wife had to do them. And so she says, hey, listen, I've had to do the dishes the past 3 or 4 nights and it's putting me to bed later than I'd like. Can you just please do your chores? Can you do the dishes? Now listen, that's not crazy for her to ask. That's not out of bounds for her to say, to call me out when I don't do my chores. She should do that, okay? But what I know about her is I know all of her sin and mistakes. And what I can choose when she calls me out is I can choose water, which is, you know what, you're right. That's my bad. Past 3 or 4 days, I could take ownership. Past 3 or 4 days, I've just kind of neglected it. I know that's fallen on you. That's my bad. I'm gonna get on that. Sorry about that. That's water. Or gas. Gas would be, I'm not gonna say this, gas would be maybe she's right, but I know some of her sin. And so instead of dealing with that, let's bring up her sin and let's make that the attention and the focus right now. So I might say something like this if I'm pouring gas. Hey, I understand that I haven't done the dishes the past 3 or 4 days, but do you realize you've been late to picking up the kids the past week? Like, what's that about? Is that helpful? No. Is that relevant? No. Is it true? Maybe, but it's not relevant. So the rule in our house is you can only bring up one problem at a time per day. Per day. Some of y'all are better than us and you can handle more than one per day, but we can't. So for example, if she is the one that wants to bring a complaint to me, I can't bring up a complaint to her the rest of the day. So now if we both know we have a complaint, we race to each other to bring it up. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, you're off the clock. So if she says that, I can't do anything to say, yeah, but you this and yeah, but you that. So it almost makes my only option water. And what we want to do during conflict is bring the other person's sin into play as if it's relevant or helpful, and it's not. If you have something that you're frustrated with them about, then you bring it up at a different time, not in the middle of conflict, because it's not helpful. It's not relevant. I understand your feelings about something might be relevant in how you treat them, but you need to listen to that conflict and then you need to officially pour it out. The reason we have to wait another day is because I don't want to pretend to solve it, wait 30 minutes and go, all right, my turn. So that's our rule. You can adopt it or you cannot. So one problem per day is all we can handle. In closing, this is what I want to challenge you to do. The worst thing I think you could do, one of the worst things that you and I can do in our families is this, is to lose hope. For you and I to lose hope in our parents, in our kids, in our marriage. I got to pray with somebody last service that hadn't talked to their kids, I think they said 10 years, close to 10 years. And I love as we prayed, she was hope-filled. Last thing we should do is give up hope. In your marriage, I understand it's been rocky for decades, maybe weeks, maybe months, whatever it is, but don't lose hope. I understand you've been raising a son or a daughter and it seems like since day one, nothing's worked. Don't lose hope. You see, what we celebrated last week, Easter, was all about the resurrection. And this is what I love about my God. He loves to bring dead things back to life, and it's not just people. He loves to bring dead marriages back to life. He loves to bring dead relationships, father and son and daughter, back to life. He loves to bring a dead home and revive it and give it his spirit and bring it back to life. We as believers, there is no room in our theology not to have hope. Our theology calls us to be hope-filled, to be hope dealers is our job description. So don't lose hope. No matter how bad it is, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. So I'm gonna ask you to do a series of things, kind of homework. Here's some application. One is I want to encourage you to decide when you leave here to be a family that fights fair. Listen, every family fights. Make the decision to fight fair. Make the decision to fight here and not here. Gather together as a family. Whether it's with your parents, whoever it is, gather with them today or Skype or Zoom with them or sometime this week. And the next thing is come up with what are our rules to fighting fair? If you don't have rules to fighting fair and nobody knows them, then how are you gonna fight fair? Actually have that conversation. What does it feel like? What are some things that we can incorporate? Bring in some of mine, make your own, whatever it is. Create some rules to fighting fair and just see what might come out of that. Then the last one, I wanna encourage you to come back next week. I want to encourage you to come back every week for this series as we're going to continue to build on how to have a healthy family. Let me pray for you. If you're here, let me just go ahead and get everybody to stand up. Actually, Lake County, go ahead and stand up. Close your eyes. We're going to pray. If you happen to be here with a parent, a sibling, a child, maybe put your arm around them, maybe hold their hand. Let me just pray for us. God, we come before you. God, I thank you for the grace that you give me every time I've been a knucklehead to my parents, to my kids, to my wife. I thank you that you've given them such graciousness towards me. And we come before collectively online Lake County Apopka as we are individuals representing families or whole families that are here, partial families that are here, and we're coming together and we're saying, God, would you help us to fight fair? Would you help us to choose to pick up a bucket of water and not a can of gasoline? And God, our knee-jerk reaction is to self-protect and to fight and defend. But would you help us to love sacrificially, to not always have to be right? Would you help us to fight fair, not to name call, not to lose hope, not to raise our voice? God, we're not trying to imagine a life with no conflict. That's not realistic, but would you at least help us to learn to fight fair? And as we reconcile, it actually brings us closer together. God, I pray for genuine reconciliation to take place today. Not superficial, we just kind of forgot about something and moved on, but genuine forgiveness where there is pain and heartache, genuine healing. We pray that all in the precious name of Jesus.